Well, it's good evening here at 7 o'clock in Queensland, which obviously is New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, and ACT now that they're all joined us on the same time zone. It's 9 o'clock for our friends over there in New Zealand, and of course, it's 10 o'clock in the morning in the UK. And tonight, our guest is actually in the studio. He's arrived, and a fascinating story. And my co-host and colleague here, Julia, actually met him in an eventful space and place here in Brisbane, and as a result, he's in the studio. So welcome to you, Julia.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of Dreaming the New Dream. It's great to have you with us, and I'm so delighted to have Adrian join us. I did meet Adrian on an eventful space on the dance floor, and as the evening went along, people got happier and happier. Were ripping off their shirts, jumping up and down, and we all had great fun. But I went a couple of times because I had such a good time and I just felt so connected with the people that we're dancing with, because obviously when you dance in that kind of space, you are not following fixed patterns or routines. You are tuning into your body and giving it freedom of expression, which we don't very often get these days. And as time went on and I got to know Adrian and his beautiful wife, Monica, I was completely gobsmacked to find out that Adrian is not just a dancer, but a fully fledged engineer who has worked all the way in the White House and in high echelons of power. And he has lived in California. And for some reason, the Rainbow Serpent brought him to Australia. And then on top of that, to make it even more interesting, he was born in Transylvania, and he's the first Transylvanian I've ever met. So welcome, Adrian. We've got lots to talk and ask you about.
Oh, thank you, Julia, for such an introduction. Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's been really a pleasure to meet you, and it was such a synchronous moment to just when you came to one of our events. It was actually an event that was done for the community, and I got to catch up with you a little bit and talk about the interesting things you do. And I so appreciate you inviting me here, and because this is, I think, it's the first time when I do this kind of an interview, and I felt that this is something that you have passion about, and just we can join forces here and bring something different to the world. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Jeff's got the map up here of presumably Transylvania. It looks like Romania. And from what I learned from you talking to you is that you are actually the third generation dancer in your family, and that dance plays a hugely important role in your society growing up, to the point that when you move countries and you don't dance every weekend, you actually miss it.
Yes, that's right. Third generation that I know of, even my great-grandfather, I think, was not really as big of a dancer, but yeah, my grandfather was part of this group called Kalushari, which is a ritual dance, mystical ritual dance that has its roots back to the Etrusc culture and was first documented by the second emperor of Rome, Numa Pompilius. At that time, it was the cult of Mars, and they were called it the Sali. The Sali were the dancing monks or the dancing priests of Mars. That they were, during the springtime, they were joining the people in the street to do this dance that was for the purpose of protecting and healing the city. So they had this belief that the Mars, the shields of Mars, which they were these ancillas that I brought one of these pictures that date back from that time. This Kolisali doing this dance initially they were doing them with shields, with these shields that they believed that they came from heaven to protect them, and with swords. This was a symbolic thing that at that time was considered that as long as they carry those shields and they carry this energy, the city of Rome would be protected. So from there and all the way to nowadays, the Kalushari form of dance. It's preserved in Romania because Romania, it's like a very odd mix of modern and traditional. We are exactly at the boundary between East and West. We are exactly at the border now at NATO and Russia. And this is where like you have like both Eastern traditions and things that have to do with inner like work and with peace and harmony, and the Western world, which is more externally oriented with engineering and you know, capitalism and everything that like Western Europe has to offer. So Romania and Transylvania especially is like really the like intersection of these both worlds. And we have, I was lucky to be able to still see these traditions alive because Romania was exposed really late to the Industrial Revolution. Didn't happen in the 19th century. Romanian Industrial Revolution happened like around 1945, 1950, when pretty much after the Second World War. And that allowed like just to have still contact with this rural, traditional kind of culture that was so different than what in Western society what we are used to. I mean, already I'm, of course, I live in the Western society for more than 22 years. I left when I was 25, right after graduating uni. And for me, I think the first thing that kind of struck me, it was, like you said, I missed these weekly ways to reconnect, to come back into my body, to meditate. Now we call it meditation. Before, probably it was called just, you know, a walk in nature or gardening or listening to music or dancing. Of course, and all these things and meditation that are just an essential part of us being balanced and catching up and processing all the experiences that we go through that can keeps us sane. And I felt that in the West, there is very quickly we resort to like just going to a quick fix, to a medicine, to a pill that will solve the problems, and they kind of solve the symptoms, but really the core of it, the problem is I don't think it's gone. And this is what these dances that my grandfather was addressing. It was actually a dance designed to help people that are into some kind of physical or psychological distress, and they kind of drift in a world of their own, into like probably something what modernly we would call like a PTSD kind of thing, like when you get disconnected from the environment, when you are in how to say, in a state of psychosis, kind of like disconnected psychosis, disassociative. And those dances were really the things that would help people to connect back into their body, to come back from that hazy world of like fake memories and traumatic visions of probably something that happened before to them once, and then all of a sudden they couldn't function properly. And this tradition was like it was very interesting how it came up. It was they start usually in March. So this is because it was the god of Mars. Like it was starting in March, but they would just start to be recruited, and this is usually young men chosen for their prowess, and they were single men that they had both parents alive. So in other words, people that were not traumatized in a way or another. And these guys were taken by the captain of this, that was the initiated, into a secluded way, secluded place in the forest to be initiated into this rite. So they could actually be able to perform this dance and have this gift of taking people's at that time they were calling it bad spirits. So they were protecting against these spirits that would bother them and bring them back to their community, to the people that they loved.
So it's quite shamanic, was it? You know, like you had to be chosen, you had to go through a ritual, you had to train for it.
Yes.
And there was the healing purpose and the uniting purpose, and bringing everything back in order, which is what the shamans usually do in each community.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, for me, it was also later on, I just realized what it was. And I just realized only when I was in the United States and witnessing the rituals in the Native American traditions. And I couldn't help but notice the similarities. Even there are different ways, but all these shamanic methods, they kind of like they serve the same purpose. And that is really to bring that to help people process all their memories and all their experiences, make sense out of them, and come back into a place of harmony with the environment, with the people around them. And I was really, when I realized that, I was just ecstatic, just to realize that this is what I was doing all along. But kind of like just seeing through it from the outside, from like another culture, to realize what it was, because I took it for granted. It was something that we were doing all the time. It's this tradition of dances. It was like something that in the village and in the traditional cultures is done every week. So every weekend they had this hora, or this circle dance, that is present in a form or another in every culture. And during this hora, this is where, like in the city, we were like taking it in a different form. Like for me, I just took it, and once I started, I had a computer back in '95, and I built my own computer, and I started to collect more music. I started to get friends together, and we were just dancing in the weekend. So the ecstatic dance that I was doing, it was back in like 95, 96, that's when I started to do it. But it was just because we were enjoying it, and we never needed any kind of stimulant. We didn't drink alcohol or anything else. At the same time, we were in a yoga school.
Can I just just stop?
Sure.
I was going to ask you about this picture. So this is what you're saying, the Cyrillic dances?
Yeah, these are the Kalushari or Kolisali. So we call it Kalushari. So it's like really, our languages are very Latin, and Romanian is very close. And some people, they call it also, they say because they jump so high, because they are connected with the spirits of the fairies, the spirits of the forest. So they float kind of in the air. That's and this is their joy, and their like liveliness is the one that can actually take a person. Doesn't matter how disconnected they are, they can come back to their senses.
Okay, so that's the the high and the ecstasy. It pulls them out of the lower vibrations.
Yes, that's.
Have you done this? Because I was going to ask you, because like I can jump upwards. But then the idea of doing the splits at the same time, it just kind of goes, my mind just goes, how am I going to do that? So I'm going to ask you, Adrian, how do we do that?
Well, when I was just probably like in my 20s, I could just jump a little bit higher, and I could do probably the same thing.
So you wait until you're like starting to come down, and then you.
Well, it's the form. It's like, again, very different. My grandfather used to do it, and at the same time while he was doing it, he was also whistling to coordinate with the people in the same group. So he was really just the bearer of this tradition, from like that. He took it again from another captain of dance, of this dance, and he kept he kept it alive. But again, he was born in the village, but he was actually a very educated man. He lived all his life in the city, probably after 20 years old. So he kept both these parts of himself, this like the part that he had to show up for work and be like the financial chief officer of a big factory, or a teacher later on in life, and have this traditional part, that keeping all these traditions from like who knows thousands of years old. And probably that's why I feel for me it's also like something that feels natural. I'm at the same time an engineer, and I do lots of things in the mainstream world, but at the same time I feel that I need that part, that connection with nature, the connection with the traditions that help. They are nothing else but ways for us to reconnect.
I'll tell you what, you guys Romanians, you got a great stable of pedigree of gymnasts. I mean, Nadia Comaneci, she was just unbelievable, isn't it? So that flexibility and that she offered and all the rest of the Romanian gymnasts, I mean, you can see where the dancing has overflowed between gymnasts and bloody dancing, isn't it? There's quite a shared relationship there.
Yeah, I guess because, as I said, it's a big tradition. Like everybody is dancing. It's when kids are taught to dance since they are like 5 or 6. It's like really, the parents they take it as a big responsibility to prepare them when they go first to that hora dance, to the community dance, that they actually know, like they can let themselves be and let themselves dance. So maybe, yeah, that has an effect on all the other physical activities that like gymnastics and other things that
Oh, the other one's weight training, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
weightlifting. You guys are good at weightlifting.
yeah
We moving to the United States as a continent from Romania. We're going into this.
Yeah, actually, sorry. Before we do that, there's 2 questions I had. Was how did, from these rites of mass in Rome, how did this?
how did they
How did they come to Romania?
so Romania, the southern part of Romania was at one point colonized by the Romans, so we still have like different buildings and different like even aqueducts and things that were from the Roman era. Dobroja, which is like by the Black Sea and all the like on the shore of Danube, there are lots of Roman artifacts, and I guess there was an overlap also, as I said, language-wise. Romanian is very similar with Latin. In 3rd grade, we just learned Latin in like 1 semester because we just learned the differences between because it's so similar. Again, those shields that the Mars warriors were wearing in that depiction of Salis that were like the Mars dancing priests, it's actually very similar with the Thracian shield that was used in Romania. That this is way before even the Roman Empire. So Thracians are the same. It's that tribe. I don't know if you saw like the Gladiator with Russell Crowe. He's actually he was called the Thracian. He was coming from that tribe. So Romanians are coming from Dacians, it's an offshoot from Thracians. So this is, I think, there was this connection. I think always there was probably this right into that population that was speaking the same language. It was more officialized by the second emperor of Rome, by Numa Pompilius, because he's the one that actually created all the rules and rituals that the whole Roman Empire was based later on, that allowed him to sustain for so long. He created like lots of moral and like worthy of following models. So they had like the Vestal Virgins rituals also. So it was like that feminine side, that nurturing, that the chastity, the purity that was a very, very important quality that they valued, and they were the ones that they were the bearer of the truth. So even if you wanted to have something like a will carried out or this, you would actually entrust it to the Vestals. And then the masculine part of this rite is the ritual of Mars, which, as I said, initially it was like more about like physical warriors, about like swords and shields. And it was this shield, that the Ancilla, that the Emperor Numa or Pompilius believed that fell from heaven. And he said that it was he had what's it called, a nymph, which is like a channel. It was like a lady that she was channeling. Her name is Egeria. So Egeria just channeled for him, and he told him that actually that shield came to Rome to be a symbol of protection, and as long as that shield remained in the possession of Rome, Rome is going to be protected. It's something similar with what the Trojans have, like in the form of palladium. I don't know if the palladium was like a wooden statue that was also an amulet or a symbol of protection. So then what he did, just to protect the identity of this Ancilla, this shield that came from heaven, he ordered to make 11 other more shields, completely identical. with that shield, and put them into the Temple of Mars, and appointed these young men, the Sali, the Kali Sali, to protect them and to make sure that nobody touches them. And this is really how, like, the first historical kind of, this is 700 BC.
It's kind of like the spiritual mandate that the emperor had, was that shield.
Yeah.
And then the protection. So,
Well, the Sully that was used in Game of Thrones, wasn't it? There was a huge big army that turned up. Just using the same name.
Oh yeah, the Game of Thrones. Yeah, yeah. I think they take some like different parts from history, and they probably like just make the story.
Exactly right. Hey, your place was correct me if I'm wrong, I mispronounce it.
Brasov, yeah.
Okay, so it's in the home of Transylvania, which is Victor Vlad or something.
Vlad the Impaler, yeah. He
Yeah.
was again another figure in the Middle Ages, yeah.
So that's where we are, and this is the capital of Transylvania, yeah.
Well, it was during the Habsburgic Empire, like after my city was founded in like after the 1200s by the Teuton Knights, after they came from the Fifth Crusade. So the Teuton Knights is the same, similar with like the Templars, and these, like they were like knights that they were protecting the virtues of religion. So they went to Jerusalem to take Jerusalem back. They failed. They came back, and they actually founded my city, that actually had this year 750 years anniversary of the first historical documentation of it. So Brasov was always a center of commerce. It was like the crossroads of Carpathians. So it was the passing over the Carpathians from the Wallachia and Moldavia. Moldavia and Wallachia are the other Romanian provinces, to Transylvania.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you call those knights? Hadn't heard that word before.
So they are the Templars, you probably heard, and these are the what are just now it's escaping.
yeah, Knights of Malta. I think they're in Poland as well. I think but yeah, I don't. I heard you the first time.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
So. I'd never heard that word before. Anyway, that's okay. So they all joined forces.
Teuton Knights. Yeah, Teuton Knights. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Teuton. So it's
Teuton.
Yeah.
That's the German one.
Yeah, Teutonic. So they are Saxons, because the whole city, it's actually Saxon. Like if you look at the architecture and everything, and it's still we have like a high school, like kindergarten schools and high school that teaches everything in German. At one point, my city was majority German, then Hungarian, and then Romanian. And my mother is also Hungarian, so I'm half Romanian, half Hungarian. So it's a mixture of like nationalities and cultures and traditions, and lots of those it's, I think, the last corner of Europe where those traditions are still alive. We have like even like, I think the personality that kind of put light on this was Prince Charles, because he just has like considers Transylvania his second home. He bought a house in the village where my father-in-law was born, Viskri, and he just loves to come there because he's never seen anywhere else in the world that he traveled a place where like true sustainability and resilience, and like, because pretty much those people were able to self-sustain, like they were producing everything. Like the clothes, the traditional clothes that I'm dressed like in those, with the pictures that I give you, are actually made by my wife's grandmother from scratch. They were pretty much growing hemp, and they were making the string, and then they would have like one of these I don't know how they are called, sewing, like they were making the fabric, and they did everything. So all those are authentic. They are just made from scratch, no industrial kind of processing or anything. Everything was done locally. They didn't need basically anything from the outside.
That's amazing. That's really something worth aiming for now. And there's a picture of you with a guitar.
Yeah. This music was a big part of, like, my father. This is what I took from my father, was playing guitar and harmonica, and since I was a kid, I was just exposed to all the music. Like we had like a huge collection of LPs from like all the symphonies, classical music, operas all the way to like some Western music. It was coming. We had these big magnetoscopes because we were not allowed really to have music from the West. It was still communism. So they would smuggle like the Beatles or ABBA or Boney M. And when I was about probably 6, 7 years old, he gifted me a magnetoscope, a Tesla magnetoscope. And that's when I started to build my collection of music. I loved, like, I didn't really understand English at the time. I was listening to the Beatles and I was melting. I was just so impressed, like, by the music. And that kind of like, always I was passionate about that. And that's why I was, even when I was in uni and I started to be able to afford to buy speakers and to have a computer, that was the first thing I did. I just gathered my friends and let's dance, and we were all enjoying that time to, just be ourselves.
I see in the European Union, Romania is really classified as a low socioeconomic country. And it's got a bum rap with the Rommies or the Gypsies going into the UK.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that unfortunately, like after 1989, Romania was at that time it was pretty much exporting a lot of things. Lots of things, like even tractors they made it all the way to Australia. I've actually met somebody that had one of those tractors, UTB tractors. So the mistake that the ruler at that time, Ceausescu, did was he wanted to detach from the International Monetary Fund and pay those debts ahead of time, because he knew that if those debts would actually continue, they would actually enslave the country and he wouldn't be able to get out of it. But he's forced it too much, and people, like I remember just in the late 80s, just before the revolution, people were struggling. So, and that kind of led CIA to create a whole revolution that happened in 1989 in December. And after that, pretty much the economy was downhill. There was pretty much all the companies that came in purchased the factories that they were in Romania. They were producing cars, tractors, helicopters, airplanes in my town, and they sold them to scrap metal. My father actually was in the last few years that he was the director of total quality management in one of these factories of 30,000 plus employees, and he saw everybody fired, and like the divisions that he designed, that they were pretty much making brass products, which are pretty much, they had orders for 10 years ahead, where it was cut and pretty much sent to scrap metal. So yeah, Romania was like most of the countries that they were colonized, just the victim of an economic coup, and it never recovered. And after that, corruption and all these things. Now it's starting to recover, and in some way, it's like the fastest growing economy in the western part of the country, especially. Western part of Romania always was a bit more industrialized, and Transylvania and like the part that it's close to Hungary. But again, it's really not to the point where it was at once. And yeah,
it's all part of the economics trends, isn't it? I mean, when Cadbury's chocolates, they used to get their milk from British farmers, and of course the pasture in the UK had certain trace elements in it, so that the British were used to all the Cadbury products. But Kraft came in and brought Cadbury's, and then Kraft basically said, well, we're going off to Romania and we're going to get the milk from Romania, which didn't have the pasture growth and didn't have the pH, and so the taste of all the Cadbury products was had gone off the Richter scale as far as the British consumers were concerned. It was a real interesting bean counter situation where they thought they're going to be saving money, but it's the whole paradigm of commercialism, isn't it?
Yeah, that's actually, that country it's also in my town, and was previously was called Cibo, from Cioccolata
Cibo,
Bomboane,
yeah.
and then it became Kraft. And I even went to an interview for the IT when this was just right after I graduated university. Before I was drafted in the army, I actually went for an interview to Kraft, but. Yeah, yeah, that's also like another history. They were given some like taxing incentives, and as soon as those taxing incentives finished, they just moved on to a country that would give them the same incentives. I think they moved somewhere else. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, they do that in
Like
the tiger
hitchhikers.
economies of Asia too, don't
Yeah.
Get a free ride.
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
So-
All right, so I think we've got a great grasp of that, except we're now going to move from the dance to dancing with the military and dancing with the White
Yeah.
House. Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah. Sort of.
Yeah.
How did you cross the
Uh,
Atlantic?
Well, yeah, this was like I moved to United States in 1999, and it was my major actually wasn't just general engineering, but I was working since university into the first internet service provider in my town. And we opened the first internet cafe. This was back in '96. That's where actually I met my wife, in that internet cafe. And with that knowledge, I just caught the wave of .com boom. Like if you remember in the 2000s, all those .com companies were just exploding. Amazon and all those things, they started to become a name. And they were really looking for web designers like crazy. Again, and this was like really my first job after university. Was that I worked in a architecture company where I was doing drafting for like mountain chalets, but also because I came from the background of IT and that internet service provider, I knew how to make websites. And I created their website. They had a bed and breakfast website besides the architecture business. And that was my luck. That was the only thing that I could actually put online and anybody in the world could actually see. And I actually just based on that, I got my first job, and I moved to Chicago. And initially, I was working in a school teaching these kind of skills to people that were moving from programming. It was that scare of Y2K. I don't know if you remember, when people were saying that after year 2000, lots of computers will go haywire, and all those programmers, they were involved. It was a whole army of programmers that were involved in that, but they felt that after that will be over, they had to transition towards something else. And they said, okay, we're going to transition to web design, web development, and e-commerce kind of platform. So this was my first job. I was teaching classes in web development, and I was building that company's website, which was called Aquarius Institute of Computer Science in Chicago. Yeah, that was pretty much it happened. Just like, how just like that I was at the right time with the right skills. And from there, I just started to study more, and I went from just web development into networking, which is like just telecommunication technologies. And I kept studying into that because Windows and all that, it was like always changing. I don't know if you remember those times when Windows 98, Windows ME, Windows 2000, it was always a perpetual change.
Oh, it started with 3.1, mate.
I started with that one back in before 95.
Yeah.
But it was still a big change during the IT industry, and I just said, okay, I'm going to go into something more fundamental that doesn't change, and went into internetworking, which is the engine that drives the internet in the core. Like that's what made the information revolution possible. This was like really interesting for me. At the beginning, I was pretty much, computers were a passion for me. It was not something that I did it for money. It was back in Romania. It was not even paid. But all my friends, they were calling me and said, I have this problem. Can you help me? I was like, sure, I would love to. So from that, it actually ended up being my job. And in the States, I studied for pretty much many years. I studied like probably 10 years later. I started in 99 and I finished in 2009. I got to have 2 expert level degrees in internetworking, which something that people that are in IT, they know it as CCIE. It's Cisco Certified Internetwork Expert. which is the equivalent of a PhD in the industry. So whenever you needed an expert or a PhD, you had to have a CCIE on staff. And
Unless you're Edward Snowden.
yeah, I was actually working with the same kind of companies that Snowden was working with. I knew the company that he worked for, Boaz and Allen and Boaz, and we're working with Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. Yeah, all these. I was not into the defense area because I was not born and with citizenship with a clearance. I always worked in the public safety. So I supported things like Federal Emergency Management Agency and state troopers and medical evacuation companies. So the company that I worked for, it's called Rewiring. Now it's actually became part of Rockwell, which was Rockwell Collins, which is a bigger company. But it was a company that had a history of 80-something years, that was owning all the radio frequencies for air-to-ground communications. So they were experts in wireless communication. And after 9/11, they realized that they have a problem of communication. They had all these police departments and fire departments and ambulance. They had all these amazing systems, but they couldn't communicate with each other.
So they were different frequencies.
They were not different. Even if they had the same frequency, the vendors were, in order to bind you to their product, they would create like a proprietary codec or a proprietary way that you couldn't buy or you couldn't interoperate with any other. So vendors, pretty much. Motorola headphones or headsets from the police, they would not work with Maycom headsets that the state police or the fire department would have. So they had this problem that all of a sudden, we need to have actually a system that would bind all this together. And this was the project that I worked in. And their first application was actually in Hurricane Katrina. We're creating these mobile command vehicles that I have a couple of pictures from FEMA and from that they were dispatched into these disaster areas. And they were, like where there were forest fires or hurricanes or this, where they had no infrastructure, so they could actually coordinate with all the first responders. And all the first responders, they could communicate with each other to say, oh yeah, by the way, I extinguished a fire here, but I need also a person that is badly injured, I need an ambulance. And they didn't have time to call their dispatcher and their dispatcher to call the other dispatcher and their dispatcher to call their. So they had to do it directly in the moments of crisis. So this was and I worked there until 2010. And then during 2009, I just started one of my projects was in California, and I had the surprise to discover, again, dance, because in one of these outings,
I stop there for a sec.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to Cyclone Katrina, because that was a real litmus test for all those organisations, and you quite rightly brought that up. But in fact, it was private enterprise, none other than Walmart, that actually saved the New Orleans, really, with their infrastructure and how to get all their logistics and get all the necessary survival stuff into New Orleans and all the other areas where the levees broke because of Cyclone Katrina. So coming back to working with all those first responders, did your system actually then tap into Walmart? Because Walmart works satellite networks, and
yes, we were.
Communication system is amazing.
Yeah, we were. The backhaul of the mobile command vehicle was a satellite uplink that was going to Washington, D.C. to coordinate with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So, but we were mostly the interface between that satellite communication and the ground communication. And these mobile command vehicles, they were really just big trucks with lots of antennas and communication equipment that was able to just pretty much make this kind of disconnection so they could have a coordinated effort in these areas. And our mobile command vehicle was deployed in Jefferson County, which was one of the most affected ones. And some of the engineers actually had to go there to help with the effort because nobody knew how to operate this. It was brand new, this mobile command vehicle. And that happened a couple of times. And after that, we had to pretty much people started to just be qualified to actually have the time to learn how to use it.
Bring people up.
Right.
Yeah.
When you got to California, you started dance.
Yeah, that was like the best time of my life. I just realizing that all the things that I was doing back in Romania back in '95, it was happening in the form of this ecstatic dance. Or initially it was like we went to this retreat center in North California that was doing what it was called, what they were calling unconditional dance. So pretty much it was like a free form dance that you didn't have to learn a form, you had to pretty much listen on to your own intuition and to connect with emotions. And that pretty much after I spent like a year, I kept going there in every single vacation, every single break that I had with my partner, with my wife, with Monica. And we said, oh, that's it, we need to move there, because I just felt that that's really a part that I lost from, like, in those more than 10 years that I was in the United States. I felt like they went in a blink of an eye, like everything being so busy and doing all these things. I felt like I lost something fundamental, like the joy of life. And once I got to California and I really rediscovered this form of rebalancing, of this form of like really reconnecting back with the joy inside of me, I just changed my life completely. I was able to just again feel like, oh, life is not just passing me by, but I can actually feel like alive. And
Yeah,
I'll just stop you there. Didn't you say, sorry, you spent some time in the White House? Were you working with the White House?
Yeah, this was like that time after I moved to California. Because I continued to do consulting for that company on the East Coast, Airing. But also at one point I didn't have as many contracts, and because I was a double CCIE, I was able to like the company that was teaching Cisco courses for like starting from big airlines and like big corporations all the way to White House. It was called CC Bootcamp. It's the company. I'm not sure if it's still around, but they were the main providers, and I was hired by them, and I was flown to different locations to teach these classes. So I was going to Texas, to like Nevada, to Washington. And actually, they didn't even tell me where they sent me. Like when I actually went to teach for the White House military office.
Put on a secret.
Yeah, they didn't tell me. I just landed there. I just went. It was not in the White House. They rented a location that was it was owned by Cisco Systems. And when I went into the class, usually like I would start the class and says, okay, so let's tell me, like I would just go through all the students and say, tell me what you are doing for, like what kind of projects you are involved. And they were these very serious kind of guys. They were like really like I could tell that they were former military. And they said, oh, yeah, most of them, they were actually either former fighter pilots or this. And they're saying, yeah, no, we are doing like, we have to deploy the wireless network for the White House. And I was like, White House? It's like, because, sometimes they have companies that you call them White House. I said, does it have anything to do, I was asking them, with the White House where President Obama? Yes, it's there. Yeah, that's that's it. It's like, because we are the White House military office, WHMO. Like, and then I looked back into my emails, and then I saw all these emails with WHMO.mil. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. So
you got security clearance?
I didn't have security clearance. I was just pretty much, I was teaching them, like they were not telling me like exactly what they were doing. It was just really generic, like just teaching them like the wireless technologies that they were about to implement in the White House, because no consulting companies would be trusted to come in the White House. So they were just these guys that were doing it directly.
You have to know the answer in order to give them the question, because the military won't tell you nothing.
Yeah, so it was. I was really lucky because that time I really met amazing people. Like, it was like I didn't know like where I would be sent next week, and what kind of people, and like they were from such different industries, and I got a glimpse of like how their life was, how they're like, what kind of sector they were serving, how they would find meaning into their life, and that, it was quite a gift, and I was just in awe to be able to do that while I was there.
I can see how your life's been really compartmentalized when you're dealing with the military and then the communication systems and the fabric that you have to work with. And I interrupted you when, sorry about that, Julia was then bringing you across to California, where you started to move into, want to get back into my heart and then the dance. I just wanted people who are watching and listen to the show to get an understanding that sometimes we just get caught up in the corporatization of life, and sometimes you just got to smell the roses, don't you? Yeah.
Well, if there is no, I don't know, there was Churchill that was saying during the war that when they were about to cut the funding for the Ministry of Culture, and I said, what do you mean? Like in the war, we have to direct all the efforts towards the military. But Churchill says, but if you cut the Ministry of Culture, why are we fighting? Why do we even leave? Like if we don't have that time to actually recharge, regenerate. So it's, for me, I felt that, that was sounded true. Like no matter what you do, if that's all you do, like just being always like, engaged into the mainstream and doing what is expected of you. I had like, I think my first house I purchased when I was 27. I had a 3-level house in the suburb of Chicago. I had 2.5 garage. I had 3 cars at one point. I don't know why I needed 3 cars, but I got caught into that consumerism, thinking that that's the answer. But in spite of that, like by all standards, I was like, oh yeah, I made it. Like I just had the American dream, but I was more disappointed than ever. Like I was just really feeling that my life was drained. Like there was no substance. There was not something meaningful in it that I could hang on to. And all these things came at the right time. Like all these like just reviving all these things and realizing that actually they were in me. They were in my traditions, in the things that I grew up with. But I didn't know how to appreciate them enough when I grew up.
So you actually stepped into your emotional body once again, wasn't it? When you started dancing, and you got the energy to move through your body. I mean, Julia's an exponent of that with her Qigong. So she's the right person to ask you these following questions, I would suggest.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I know I've done the corporate stuff as well, and you kind of get sucked in, that you're moving from one deadline to the other and one goal to the other. You're just jumping all these hurdles all the time. And there's actually a song at the moment, Dance Monkey, that kind of alludes to that whole thing, making fun of the generation that gets sucked into that. But then checking out and actually listening to your body, being present and giving it freedom to express the way it wants to without any requirements or criteria, that is just such a it's just such a turnaround and an invite and an experience for you to actually come back to your body and come back to who you are, what's inside of you, and what needs to be released. And I think, Adrian, you do a wonderful job. You've obviously gone from experiencing this as, a recreation to dedicating your life to it. And, you've gone and trained to become a facilitator in the US, right?
Yeah.
So you met some teacher. Just tell us a little more about her as to why, what was different, because there are different ways of dance schools and the freestyle dance, but what drew you to this practice specifically that you specialize in?
Yeah, well, when I was in California, as I said, I was in that retreat center when I was coming back, always between teaching jobs and all this, and that's where I met Samantha Sweetwater. She was teaching, just gave like a couple of sample classes, and then I met her again in Burning Man, which is like a big alternative festival that happens in the Nevada desert. And what drew me to her, it was that like that connection with the tradition, and like she was like really, again, like she was very embodied. She was like really exuding so much joy, but she had this wisdom, like this kind of deep wisdom in her that came from, like, she had like teachers that were in the Native American practice, and she took a lot of elements that were like just not just invented, they were just taken from tangible practices that and she introduced us also to her teacher, that was George Bertelstein, that he was the leader of the Native American church that was running all these events in Berkeley, California, that all the people from universities, from hospitals, they were coming to him to his ceremonies, his pipe ceremonies. And he would just really, he was a war veteran, so he had his own share of trauma, and from that PTSD kind of like burden, he discovered also like the Native American practices, and he became a pipe carrier also like through a set of circumstances. And he was also like a counselor, so he had psychology background. So combining the Native American practices, the traditional practices, with what like a modern psychologist would know and understand, he created this amazing space that inspired me a lot. So it just like really kind of helped me a lot to understand my own connection with those traditions, my own connections with what is happening in my body. And then I started to make these connections, that because I traveled through so many places, to see the commonalities, like to see actually what is the reason why those things are done. Because even each tradition has different ways of doing. Some people, they have different beliefs or myths around it, but you see all those myths are different because it depends on the environment. Like the Andes, they have a different traditions than the Native Americans or the Europeans, but they all have something common. And that commonality, it was like those techniques to really get into your body and be able to remind your body how to unwind and slide down into that state, what I call relaxed awareness or trance. And those were techniques that are very simple techniques that you can, like anybody can learn. But the only secret is like you have to practice them. You have to, it's not something that you do once and you're just all set. You have to be making it part of, to rewire your nervous system so you can relax again. And this is a process, but it's something that is done in a pleasant way, because many people, they want to do all kinds of things. They want to go to the gym, they want to do like have a healthy body, but they drag their feet to the gym, or they drag their feet to do something that it doesn't flow with their life. Whereas dance, it's something that in the traditional community was integral part of their life, and it was something that you didn't have to force yourself to go, and it was fulfilling all these needs of physical exercise, of connecting with yourself, of meditation, like bringing yourself back into peace, of and socializing, which is like again one of the most important elements in dance. So all
outside of work, So I'll just, Adrian, I'll just highlight what you're saying, because I think for even for me, that's new. I hadn't realized that the dance practices that you do, and as you said, you've come full circle, because your great grandfathers were using the dance on weekends to help people get over PTSD, and then you've gone to America and you've ended up learning the same thing, but from different indigenous tribes and practices, and then putting it together. And as a hypnotherapist, I have looked at PTSD, and I think World War I, there's a lot of footage of soldiers coming back from the war, and they can't actually move. They're stumbling because their muscles, everything's just packed. It's just so tight that there's actually footage of them that they can't move. And then after they've gone into trance and they've started releasing, whatever's frozen from their system, and also the spirits, you actually see footage of people moving normally again. And as you were saying that, I was just remembering that, and realizing that in your own way, that's also what is something that you're passionate about, knowing that that is what that kind of dancing can actually do for people.
Yeah.
Guilt can play a huge part, can't it? Guilt and recriminations and what other people think of you. And particularly if you've gone and killed someone. I mean, if you've gone to war and actually killed another human being, it's not part of your psyche. I mean, gosh, that must have a real major effect on people, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think anybody that goes through a war experience can come out like whole on the other side, and but many times it's like, these are extreme cases, but many times it's like just it's not only always like PTSD. It could be like even things like, for instance, going through a traumatic experience of disconnection, like for instance of going through a breakup, or going through like a childhood that like some experiences that probably like feeling disconnected from the parents, the primary carers. All those things, they leave scars into our psyche, and what our subconscious does, it does this kind of bulk sorting. And usually it's done in the sleep, because if we don't give ourselves time to meditate or do some kind of practice of like walking or like, you know, gardening or something that will disconnect our mind, but still keeping focused, usually this kind of traumatic experiences, they get sorted in the dream. It's like really connecting with others, having meaningful relationships, and losing that completely, like as a result of a trauma, that of an event that probably sometimes, many times it happened just once, but leaves a scar in our soul. That some in traditional cultures, they say we lose part of our soul, and then they do these trance inductions and this kind of shamanic ceremonies to bring that part of our soul back. In other words, in modern terms, it's nothing else but really releasing that trauma that marked as like a big part of life, as unsafe, raising that shield and letting ourselves to live again. So that's like really probably like more common than nowadays than the PTSD of like somebody that comes from a war. But that's the part that actually takes really a big toll on many people that I've seen, just really just going through like mundane experiences, and then all of a sudden they realize that all of a sudden I feel like I'm numb inside. I don't really feel alive anymore. And it's just really many times it's tracing back to an event like this, of some kind of thing that without even knowing started to affect our daily life, because all these things kind of get programmed and they happen below our awareness. They happen unconsciously. And it's a mixture of, like, again, childhood memories or experiences, sometimes teenage dreams, or like nowadays it's like a mixture of like probably commercials and social media, of all kinds of things that we think that it's important, and all of a sudden we feel hurt that we are not really like up to good enough, or we are not lovable. I think, Jeff, I was talking about this thing with you before about how media influences us, and how like really the whole model of news is like excitement for free news. You just give us your attention and we'll give you free news. But all those news are really not reality. They are just extremes, are just either like things that are happening like really once in a while, or things that are very bad, and really that kind of leaves people that live a normal life to feel inappropriate, like really feel that they are out of place. And all these things are just having an impact on us. And what with the dances, and this is like really you can actually reconnect with people that live this experience, and realizing that actually it's not just you that have this kind of feeling of being inappropriate or like being not good enough, that actually many people go through that challenge. And that's what makes it more, I don't know how to say, easier to overcome, easier to actually tackle that problem. So we start always with like a sharing circle, which we don't say, oh yeah, just pour your life here, but just a little bit about what kind of challenges you have, generic. and then realizing that actually the challenge that you thought that it was just you, it was probably like 10 other people, they have it. And then you have the chance to connect and really relate with those people and really learn from each other how, because some people, they were able to overcome some challenges. Some people, they are still in the process of doing it. So it's all about this collective power that we have when we come together as a collective, that gets unleashed into these community gatherings, and this is actually our superpower as humans. Like there is this book, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. It's called A Brief History of Humanity. And he said that we as humans, we are not really super strong physically. We don't have like amazing senses, like smell or hearing or sight. Any animal, just like a dog, can smell 100 times better than us. Any kind of animal is stronger than us. And in spite of that, we are the dominant species on this planet. And this is just because we have this quality. We have the ability to share knowledge. We have the ability to collaborate on a larger scale that no other animal can do. Like even apes and like other social animals, they can do it, but on a very limited kind of like scale. Like for instance, apes, they do it like just for the people, with the people in their tribes, like people that they know, but they cannot really collaborate to the level to create like, so to actually build up the technology that will build a car, for instance. They are just because they cannot really scale up that much. So he said, Yuval Harari was saying that our capacity to actually connect with the same purpose and collaborate even with strangers, it's our superpower. And if there would be any kind of future for humanity, it's just if we actually reconnect back together with each other, and we tap into what actually made us get to where we are, but in a more sustainable and better way.
So tell us about, you obviously you and your wife do these weekly events where people can find exactly that. They can come in and connect and dance and express themselves in a way that normally they can't in everyday life. If people would like to join in, where do they come? What's the best way for them to find out more?
Just if you're in Brisbane, just Google Ecstatic Dance Brisbane or go to ecstaticdance.com.au. There we have like our schedule for our weekly events. So I wanted to make them weekly events because this is, as I said, it's a practice. It's not something that you do once in a while, like entertainment or this, because it has to do with getting your nervous system rewired to paint a different emotional picture. You don't get good at the gym just going once to the gym, or you don't get good at anything in like just or any kind of mental skill or any other skill by doing it just once. And this is no different. It really takes practice. And I just for the last 8 years, we were able to just dedicate every week time to actually do this event. And now, actually, more than ever, after we had this period of isolation in COVID and this, we actually found that even for many years, we were like just not many people were coming. We're probably like having like small events. Nowadays, I think many people, they just realize that this is a really important part of their life. I think many times we appreciate only something that we take for granted only when we lose it. And when we lost this kind of cohesion and this kind of places to actually connect, people, I think they realize that, these kind of events are actually providing that. And this is what we aim to create a space where people feel comfortable and feel at ease to actually communicate and be able to form meaningful connections. And not least, just to be able to learn how to unwind their tension, to release all the stress that they accumulate during the week, and step into the weekend as better persons to be present with their family, with their loved ones. Yeah. And we have,
Sorry, and having been to the dance events, and they're both daytime and evening, you have certainly succeeded in doing that, both a safe space and open space where the people are really respectful of each other, and where it really doesn't matter what age or color or shape you are. you just feel like natural and accepted, and like you have the freedom to not be a zombie or a robot, and instead of really express yourself. So well done, you, Adrian.
Oh, thank you, Julia.
Jeff, did you have any questions before we sign off?
I was interested to hear about the use of meditation and so forth. For a mere male to step into his emotional body, I'll tell you what, that's what I've been doing for the last 7 or 8 weeks, and I have to say, it's really painful. It's really, really hard. And I know in my meditation states, I've actually seen myself come to these huge, big French doors, the wooden doors, and I open them, and then just as I open them, I just get hit with all this bloody energy, and it just overwhelming. It's just so much just hits you, and so I shut them doors. And so you put your suit of armour on, put your get in your castle, and you got all your other fellow warriors with you, and you got your moat, and you got your drawbridge. So up come the walls, So, but in these last 7 weeks, I've made this monumental decision to get out of the suit of armour and get out of the castle and get out of that, open the drawbridge and go out onto the land, and a bit like that movie Avatar, which reached so many people psychically, I suppose, with such it just touched people the way that you can walk on the land and get touched with the earth and so forth, and it feels like I've now come back to those fridge doors and opened it up, and I've just taken this humongous big energy whack that's just flooded my body, and it's just so painful. I tell you, it's worse than you could actually ever imagine, and you're just going in and you're looking at ways where you can transmute that in any form you can. And I mean, I remember sitting down, and I've expressed myself in no uncertain terms to whoever's listening out there, and I'm saying, who would want to come to this bloody planet? You talk about love and all that stuff, but there's no such thing as bloody love. And when you do go and find the love and you climb the highest mountain and you can feel it, all of a sudden there's the duplicity of the opposite, where you go right down to the swings of the opposite, where you feel recriminations, you feel the guilt, all the stuff's coming up. It's bloody really painful, but I've been listening to you and realizing how important dance seems to be in movement. And Julia's here with the Qigong. I mean, it's about going into that, stepping into that emotional body that, and I'd have to say Western males, and I'd be probably per se one of the Western males that does want to get involved in that emotional body. And as a result, with such mental compartmentized, this is how we're going to do it, step back, and we're all like Mr. Spock, look so logical, and yet stepping into that feminine essence that females have, with the nurturing aspects and feeling and expressing, and it's a goddamn situation that any male who wants to go through that journey, it's a really an interesting journey, and needs people like you, Adrian, who can actually take them through that journey of dance and rhythm and just expressing themselves. And for males, who've been told, you got to toughen up and you can't cry, and you got to be a man and all that stuff, to be able to witness the culture that you've expressed in terms of the dance movement. I think you're leading. I think you're the leader of males. It's just a matter of whether males would respond to stepping out of their suit of armor, and coming in through the doors to feel like they can have a go and not be ashamed of having a go. I take my hat off. Bloody brilliant, mate. And you can show, as we've been listening to your show, how you've gone through from Romania and through the communist world, and then you got into the internet, and then you've gone into all the internet stuff, and then you got into the States, and you've been teaching, then you got into the military, and you got into this corporatization, and then you started saying, hello, there's another way of life. There's another way of looking at life. And I think you coming on tonight, and for those people witnessing to it, I take my hat off to you, mate. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you for what you are also doing, because putting this show together and making this possible to address so many people, and really that's the communication. That's what I was thinking. I was saying before, like just bringing people together, and you are doing that. We are pretty much bringing people to with this message together, and like with all the other podcasts and events that you do, it's really addressing that part that it's missing so much into our just mainstream media. And thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me and giving me the chance to be able to share this with you.
Okay, so they've got to go to the Facebook site or the website to find out where you're facilitating. Is it all on the north side or south side of Brisbane, or are you going to the Sunshine Coast? You go to the Gold Coast?
No, we have just. I just wanted to just focus on our community here in Brisbane. Occasionally we go to some other places, but it's just an exception rather than the rule. So the rule is like to really provide that space weekly, and we have a space now that in Ashgrove. It's called the New Market Hall, and that's where all the events will be from next month. This month we still have a couple of events in West End. It's like intersection between Vulture Street and Boundary Street. It's a church, and behind that church is a hall. That's where we had our events for the last more than 7.5 years, but we started in parallel to offer these other events in the weekend in Ashgrove, and yeah, it's a much better space. It's like a space where there is nature around, and people before the dance, after the dance, can go outside and lay on the grass, watch the stars, feel have more of a natural environment than even if it's in the middle of the city, it feels like you are somewhere out in the in nature. And it's happening every week. One week it's Friday. After work, they come from 7 p.m. And then the following week it's on Saturday, and it starts from 5:30. And we go all the way to 9 o'clock. And it's really a whole process. Just really, the only thing is just to give yourself the chance to try it, because you never know what it is. It's very hard to explain, because it's an experience. It's not something that you have to participate in it to get the taste of it.
And this Saturdays, or did you say Saturdays?
Yeah, say it again.
They're all Saturdays, are they?
Saturdays and Fridays. So it's alternating between Fridays and Saturdays. It's just the only difference is the time. On Friday it's 7 p.m. So just to be suitable for people that work, and they come from work, and they, after a week of stressful things, just come back just to have a dance before the weekend. And then Saturday usually we have a bigger event, and those will start at 5:30, and that's when we have also the Cacao Ceremonies, which are just again like another element that we add to the dance that helps in connecting with the cacao. It's really a gentle medicine. It's not really the chocolate that you get from the store. It's a raw, unprocessed cacao that we get from South America, and we make this elixir that actually helps the body. First, all the blood vessels dilate, and you get into a state of relaxation that help you step into that state of relaxed awareness. Again, you're always in control. It's just a matter of like really having a help from the outside whenever, if you feel a bit too tight. Cacao, it's a medicine that helps in relaxing the body and drop into that state where you can actually be danced, not just dance. Because dance, many times we are taught that we should perform, do something. The dance that it's like usually from the traditional cultures, it's a dance that kind of comes from the inside. It's an expression of who you are, and it comes naturally when your body is relaxed. And we have a couple of exercises that we offer as a sample to try. Again, all the things that we do there, they are completely optional, but it's like really something that we learned that from different cultures that are helping in unwinding the body. They are breathing techniques, there are tapping, there are shaking, there are all different movements that kind of remind the body to do what it does naturally, because the body has its own intelligence. It knows how to get back into harmony, but we hold back. It's like, and this is there are exercises that are kind of helping in reminding the body to do what it does naturally. And once it does that, then magic happens, like really kind of that state of ecstasy, that state of trance, where you just can feel completely immersed, and your whole body feels fluid. And yeah, my joy is like really to see that in a whole, like be able to share this experience with so many people every week is just priceless, and it's what makes me really just get up every day.
And it is wonderful, and I've been a couple times, and often I see the same people, and there's Adrian and Monica, and the music's just awesome. So thank you very much for coming onto the show, Adrian. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us, and we hope you have a great week. And next week we will actually have one of the, I think it's the great grandson of Khalil Gibran, joining us from Hawaii. So the time will be a bit earlier. It'll be 4 o'clock to accommodate for the time difference. But thank you for joining us today, and tune in again next week. Have a great week in between. Thank you from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.